Hi there, good evening everyone, and welcome to another live webinar. This one has been titled The Data Advantage and How Schools Are Raising Attainment with Precision in 2025. And actually what I thought was, instead of just showcasing from a tools perspective on how schools are raising attainment, I actually looped back to a conversation with a school leader about a year ago now, and have mapped their journey for that year and actually seen the attainment that has been raised and the improvement in outcomes. And so tonight I'm joined by Matt, who is a school leader, and welcome, Matt.
Evening.
Evening. Yeah, thanks for joining. It's really good to have you here. And as I've just mentioned, it was really great to see that improvement journey with you. And I thought of you immediately as we was pulling this webinar together. And I thought that, some of those people that are listening in would actually like to hear from, someone like yourself, to see how we're actually using that precise teaching from precise data to drive meaningful impact, and actually closing those gaps in learning and driving attainment. So yeah, I'm really excited to kind of dive straight in, really. So yeah, the first question I have really, Matt, is you first encountered pupil progress, and what I would like to know is what stood out for you as different, and how did it challenge or reshape your expectations of what tracking and monitoring data could enable you as a school?
Well, I suppose it was August 2023 when I first encountered pupil progress. I've worked with data for a long time, stretching back to 2002. And I was disappointed with the outcomes at my centre. I'd been in post a year. And I was speaking to an ex-colleague, and he simply shared two images on WhatsApp. One was the tracking page from pupil progress.
Okay.
Which no doubt you'll show the viewers later on. And the second was the report page for an anonymous student that gets sent out, and both tick the boxes of what I believed my academy needed in order to move forward. So that led to a conversation with yourself, and you took me through, and straight away it was the ease of use with the platform, the visuals. It's not overwhelming for the staff that aren't as savvy technically, shall we say, yet provides the instant data. So the ease with which you can change predicted grades, you can enter topic assessments and larger, more formal mock examinations, and the fact the papers were pre-populated, staff having the immediate percentages to hand without having to wait for a data manager or any processing within the academy, would mean that it would speed up the whole process. There'd be no bottlenecks. And the fact that it was live, the fact that a teacher down the corridor could enter some marks for an assessment, and the head of faculty see those changes, then have a conversation within minutes or within the day, rather than any time lag, which meant that the students weren't getting the best teaching possible.
And I think that time lag, and again, we're looking back at that expectation of how we track and monitor in schools historically, which is that data drop cycle. And I would challenge it affects attainment, because you've got that delay in the time in which it takes to get that data back into the middle leader's hands, and actually by which point students could have moved on in their learning. So, we push it into our spreadsheets that may or may not be accurate depending on how we've built them out. We need to transfer that data into an MIS, and then we push it out into a wider school analytical tool, by which point students have already had, another, 4 lessons, and they may have moved on. And I think the idea is actually having that data there and then, so we can do something about it immediately, as opposed to waiting for that historical data drop system that we're just used to, I guess. It's been the only thing available up until this point. So yeah, I think it's interesting in what you're saying, where that time to reduce and actually having the information live means that we can be quicker to close a gap, and therefore we can drive attainment, as opposed to waiting 9 to 10 weeks on a data drop system.
Absolutely. And the other thing was consistency across faculties. And that was what really I bought into straight away. So obviously some subjects historically were better at tracking than others, but not all the tools were available. So there tends to be some more tools available for English and maths. So I know you supported the Pixel Wave with English and maths, but it wasn't available to humanities and the science, etc. And we needed it across the board, as you'll see by the results later on.
Yeah, great. I'm excited to see that. And for anyone that is tuning in tonight, we have actually got Matt's going to take us through a very short presentation on the attainment, the attainment outcomes that Matt has experienced at his school as a result of implementing pupil progress into the school. There was a key bit, and you started to allude to this, Matt, which was about the conversations that were taking place in school as a result of having this transformational effect of using a different data system. I just wondered if you could go a bit more into depth on those types of conversations that were taking place, both at a leadership level, but also at a middle leadership level, making a specific reference to that precision piece.
Yeah, so if I start with middle leadership, you've obviously got QLA, and that's for any assessment that's entered, whether it's a published assessment or a customized assessment. That gives really powerful information straight away to the teacher and middle leaders, heads of faculty. So simple percentages of those that are performing above, those that are on track, 1 grade below, 2 grades below expected. And it allows conversations around common characteristics or misconceptions with teaching if it's across more than one group. So instantly we had an improvement in department-led CPD around the conversations with middle leaders, with teachers. And it also allowed much deeper conversations to happen between different faculties, where previously they were tracking in isolation with their own system. They've now got a common vehicle to drive attainment and outcomes across all faculties, and it allows easier comparison. And you found where faculties were almost working in isolation, they're now much more supportive of each other, middle leaders. Obviously, you have the early adapters who support others, but the general conversations around data are down to individual students. Oh, we've noticed a dip with so-and-so in this assessment. How did he perform in your latest assessment? And those conversations really start to unpick and get beneath and allow us to embed strategies for those students to improve going forward. In terms of the leadership, we've introduced a weekly Year 11 strategy meeting, and pupil progress is frequently displayed upon the screen. Whether we are drilling down into a faculty, or whether we are looking at the whole overview, or whether it's against targets, predicted grades, recent performance, it now is the focus for the majority of those meetings, which again have allowed some really key whole school strategies to come out. For example, the Focus 5, which kind of links in with the Pixel and some other strategies, because I know you work together as a partnership, and they have been really powerful in driving forward outcomes over the last 18 months.
It's really great to hear how some of these conversations start to transform. I mean, what did the conversations look like prior to that, in terms of those focus groups?
There's always been conversations around students. There's always, whether it's a conversation, a corridor conversation, whether it's a break time conversation, or it's a lunchtime conversation. But having pupil progress has allowed staff to sit down and have a real focus driven by the information in front of them. And obviously, we got a lot of benefit last year just for the outgoing Year 11 cohort, but our current Year 11 cohort has been now tracked since the start of Key Stage 4.
Great.
So the picture is much more in depth, And I would say for this year's current year 11, we are at least 6 months ahead in terms of strategies, intervention, moving outcomes forward than we were at this time last year because of the in-depth tracking through year 10.
Yeah. And we loop that back round to time saved as a key part of that, and the live data, and all of a sudden you're kind of 6 months ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and I will. I think one of the questions coming up will come on to it, but the workload, the easing of the workload for middle leaders and for teachers, and having a one-stop system went down very well with staff, as you would expect, because time is precious and it gets squeezed an awful lot in academies and schools at the moment.
Well, let's talk about that now. Dive a bit more into detail about that workload piece, because I think we need to talk about it. That we're looking at a retention crisis, and actually part of what I've experienced when I was working at a school and using pupil progress is it just it saved me a lot of time, but also I felt really confident and capable at my job. And it was actually a really difficult decision to leave and start my journey with pupil progress, because I was enjoying having that confidence over where my department was, where we're heading. I could update SLT very quickly and easily, clear plan moving forward. And actually, all of what I would do transactionally in terms of like building out a spreadsheet, getting all the data crunch so I could then present, was done for me. And I found that really valuable. So not only did my workload decrease, but also my attitude towards, presenting data, actually teaching and learning in general, it all improved. And I wonder if you could share that with us, Matt, in your context, in terms of, the workload piece and maybe how middle leaders have responded to it also.
Well, I must say the middle leaders have been fantastic since it was rolled out. There was always a little bit of skepticism, I suppose, at the start. Something else. Will this be a fad? Will this last a number of years? Particularly with me being new to post. I'd only been in post 12 months at that point. But it was clear. It was clear something was needed, and it was clear they needed support and a job taken away from them, which pupil progress does. So it is the time saved on the spreadsheets, the time saved on creating spreadsheets for anybody within their department, doing the analysis for anybody in the department, because that becomes almost a one-person job, and you may have a department of 8 or 9. And I really wanted staff to own their data and be responsible. There was a bit of a culture shift prior to quite a few things in my academy. A lot of it was previously top down. So data wasn't trusted at certain levels, so to speak. And that is not the best way to work, in my opinion, or my principal's opinion. So there was a big culture change around data and staff owning data. Just once a assessment is set up, whether that's done at a department level or by a class teacher, it's simply entering one set of figures. It's clearly color coded against targets. You can adapt your predicted grade. It instantly gives you marks away from the next grade, and that is what saved a lot of time, particularly for classroom teachers. Not only for middle leaders explaining to senior leadership, but for classroom teachers to instantly put an assessment in, whether they focused on the current grade or the average grade. They can see how many marks they are away from the next level, and they can have an in-depth conversation with the student. They don't, as you said earlier, they don't have to wait 6 weeks or 6 lessons. It is, you were fantastic. 4 more marks and you can reach a grade 5. 12 more marks, you can reach a grade 6. And then the conversation, the questions were coming back from the students. Where do I get those marks? And you go to your report, the percentages, the topic breakdown. Well, this is your lowest performing topic. This is what we need to focus on. you're lucky because there's an intervention running next Wednesday. If you attend, it's focusing on that. That'll benefit you. It'll move you forward. And they can see the incremental marks going up. And when you break it down into marks and you say you've got to improve by 12 marks over 15 weeks, it doesn't seem such a huge task to a student, rather than saying, oh, you're at a 4, but you need to get to a 6. It's very different language, and we adopted the marks away language as we took on board pupil progress. But as I say, the spreadsheets are created, the pre-populated assessments are there, so that saved hours. The valuable QLA comes out, color coded. The biggest use, I suppose, or one of the biggest uses with a number of departments, is the average row at the top of any tracker. Means that, okay, my centre is got considerable gaps with national in some areas. It's aligned with in other areas, but in terms of our own cohort, the average grade can be seen on the top row, and therefore you've got a really quick indicator of where students are at in terms of their peers within the academy.
Yeah. And I think leaning what you've just explained there back to precision, it's exactly that piece where there's 2 points. The first one, let's lean into precision. If a student is 7 marks away, they can see on their reports, and teaching staff can see on their trackers exactly where those 7 marks could come from.
Yeah.
So that's motivating for both staff and the student, because there's a plan to move them forward, and we've turned that conversation into action. And as you said, if it's only 15 weeks to go, that's an achievable task. Without that, there's no precision. And what I mean by that is, if we continue to use that old methodology whereby we push summative grades into an MIS and then we push summative information into an analytical tool at the end, there's no precision. It's just, these are the students working at said grade, and then we have to loop all the way back around and figure out what we actually need to do to move them forward. Whereas I guess we're pulling it all into one, and we're saying, great, we've still got those outcomes there. We know what their working at grade is, their current grade, their trajectories, their teacher predictions. But actually, to start mapping precisely how many marks they are away and their underperforming areas, actually we can start to connect the dots very quickly and move students forward far more quickly as well. And I think this is it's an educational piece about current tracking and monitoring. And if it is tracking and monitoring, I would challenge that pushing data through systems to be left with a summative grade is tracking and monitoring. I think we need to track at that very detailed level each student, because then what we can do is precise teaching. We know exactly what students need to move forward with, and we can personalize the learning experience for those students, and actually inform our delivery in the classroom. I think that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I was just going to add the students responded really well to pupil progress as well. So as part of the launch, it was launched to all stakeholders, so not just staff. It was parents and students. I did an assembly for students.
Yeah,
talk them through what is in the background for staff. Talk them through a report that they would get prior to the parents' evening. And I also challenged students to ask their classroom teachers. I said, you need to let me know any staff that cannot give you how many marks you are away from the next grade there and then in that lesson. If they can't tell you, come back to me and let me know. Not a single student came back to me, because it's literally 2 clicks away at any point in the lesson. It's open pupil progress, open your live tracker, and the marks away are there. So the students really, really did embrace it, because they had a very clear picture instantly. And historically, you've had pupil learning checklists, etc. But given the way that pupil progress is set up, it almost that's embedded within the tracker, and those conversations can happen without the need for any other strategies such as PLCs.
I think this leads on to my next point. I like to phrase it as distributed data leadership. So we don't just get data as a leadership team, and then we need to filter down from that top end approach to our middle leaders and what the data is telling us. And then they need to push it to the students need to push to parents. We've actually created an environment where all key stakeholders have access to granular, precise data, and everyone feels that they own it, and everyone can move in the same direction as a collective body. And I think that's what's been missing historically. And I know that I speak to a lot of senior leaders up and down the country, and a common theme at the moment is that parents are wanting more. The reports that they get at the moment from an MIS is typically summative with some learning characteristics, effort, and actually they want more. They want to know how they can support their child, but just receiving that a student is working at a grade 3 in English doesn't tell them how to improve. And what we've noticed through case studies with parents and students is that the conversation is so rich now. And I've seen it in schools as well. You kind of walk up and down during parents' evening, and it's surface level conversation at times. Then you need to watch more horrible histories. You need to sit next to this person. We need to do that. And actually, what we're noticing is students are explaining how many marks they are away and what their areas of strengths are, and these areas to improve. It's feeding into their intervention schedule, it's feeding into their action plan ahead of the exams, and parents are supportive of that and can actually, help them on that path that they've got. How have your parents responded, Matt, in your setting?
They responded really well. To get that level of information at the time they do, and as you say, the one piece of work for us was actually going away and creating the systems to support what pupil progress was telling us in a way, because it was okay saying, for example, AO4 is quite poor on English language paper 1, but did we have the resources to and the messages to give parents to support their students at home working on developing that area? So it's really refined that process as well to support parents at home working with students. And the comments are, and this is one of the reasons we've recently invested in the Key Stage 3 package with pupil progress, is that God, these are so much more in depth in year 10 than the reports we got in year 9. And that speaks volumes to me.
Yeah, it's very popular at the moment, Key Stage 3, and I think you can put in a lot of groundwork to raising attainment in those years, specifically when you've got your curriculum mapped, because it's curriculum first, and then we can start to assess against the set curriculum, and we can start to identify those gaps again far more quickly. We can start to close the gaps and accelerate progress. So when we get to year 10 and 11, we're already in a very good position, and they're used to that way of working.
Exactly, and that's one of the reasons we've invested in Key Stage 3 as well, because we want to highlight the gaps and close them as early as possible. And we need Key Stage 3 to be fit for purpose and allow them to hit the ground running, rather than suddenly finding that, it's algebra that they've slipped up on for 3 years. We need to identify that early and intervention put in place. And the other thing I'd say regarding the reports, so we printed them for parents prior to parents' evening. They were sent home so they could prepare questions to come in. But then staff obviously had a copy on the desk, and a middle leader, after the first year 11 parents' evening using pupil progress, they had an ECT in their department, and they said it was phenomenal because it allowed the ECT to have conversations with the parent and the student as if they'd been teaching 10 or 12 years. And in reality, it was the end of their first term.
Yeah.
Because of the rich data and the insight in which pupil progress provides.
Yeah.
The staff, and that was really pleasing.
Yeah. So accelerating progress, but also professional development.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great. So, I mean, I guess what we're talking about at the moment, Matt, is a tool that's been introduced to transform the way we track and monitor, and ultimately with the aim of, improving attainment and outcomes. And you said at the beginning that actually the school wasn't in the position you'd liked it to be. You was in post only 12 months. And so, and we've kind of got into the detail about, students owning their reports, parents taking responsibility in that respect. We've spoke about how it's transformed the type of conversations at leadership level, middle leaders, and so how it all kind of works on the ground. But they're all key ways in which you've implemented it to get the outcomes. So I thought it would be nice now to actually showcase that, and I think you've prepared some.
I've got a little bit of data. If you just bear with me, I'll bring it up.
Which would be great. Yeah.
And here we are. So obviously we came on board with Pupil Progress in September 2023.
Yeah.
The process with which we rolled it out was quite important, and just to touch on that very quickly, I actually introduced and had an online CPD session with my heads of faculty first, because they needed to think about how they would set up assessments, whether that be mocks or subtopics first. Then Brett came in and did a whole staff CPD, and then again, following the Year 11 mock series, there was another online CPD for heads of faculty on how to analyse and the lessons learned and what we can see from the data that's in Pupil Progress, and that went down really well. So the progress for
Matt, could
the
you
outcomes,
just on the slideshow just go to the present, just for some viewers that may not be able to just quite see that.
Is it not sharing?
It is sharing on the screen. It's just on the presentation. It's still got the slides on the left. So I think it's just slideshow and then present, or like play from. Yeah, that one there.
Is that better?
Okay, I'm not too sure. No, that's fine. Yeah, I think we can see. I wondered whether it went larger, but that's fine. Yeah, we'll go with that. That's fine.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so not the most promising picture in the November mocks, as we knew. Obviously, the Progress 8 figure shows minus 1.64. Not great performance in the core subjects, English and maths. Lots of questions, because tracking was established in those areas. However, it obviously wasn't leading to improved outcomes. And I think those areas that have tracked historically suddenly learn quite a lot of lessons very quickly from Pupil Progress, and not negatively or positive. And it highlighted huge gaps in certain areas, whether that be in final level sequencing of the curriculum, or whether that be in exam performance, in certain questions. And we were able to act on that really quickly in the last academic year. And this was the focus for, as I say, not only middle leaders CPD with the Pupil Progress team, but also a whole school CPD session with myself, including the head of Year 11 and the pastoral team, around understanding students as we unpicked and went down to the question level analysis student by student. And staff picked up on that and they embraced it. And you can see, in terms of last year's results from the November mock, during that eight-month period in the academy, real improvements were made. So English Attainment went up, English Attainment 8 went up, Maths Attainment 8, you could say almost doubled. That was phenomenal. Levels of 4+ and 5+ in both subjects. And I suppose as we move away from the Progress 8 for a couple of years, the key performance indicator of 5 A to C, including English and Maths, at a 4 and a 5 is now possibly back on the table for reporting. We will manage to get increases of over 10% in those two areas during those 8 months by simply applying the right resources to the critical areas. And in some cases that was individual students, in some cases that was groups of students, and in other areas that could be certain aspects of the curriculum as it was delivered by faculties.
Yeah.
So, and there was some really quick learning. So as I said, there was some early adopters. The English team were really good and took this on board really quickly. And there was a lot of sharing of best practice, which kept people motivated.
Yeah.
And we got the buy-in from staff, and we got the buy-in from the students, and they were keen to know where they were in relation to the next assessment point. Sorry. So whether that be an end of topic test or the March mocks.
Yeah.
Now the March mocks were very close to the August results. So I've not added those in as such, but we'd made big strides and then managed to sustain. And that was just from a short period of time. So that was the first initial impact, I would say.
Yeah.
Have you got any questions, or do you want me to?
No, I mean, it's just, I'm interested in that year 2 and the impact and how that trend has or hasn't continued. But I just think it's the bit that's important for me is it's all good and well introducing a new tool, unless you've got that buy-in, unless you've got students that are using the reports in the right way, unless you've got all kind of elements working, then that's what we need to actually start getting those attainment raises, because then we can start to use that precision piece. Everyone's using the precise data to then inform curriculum delivery, inform interventions that will ultimately close students' knowledge and understanding and drive the attainment, which we can clearly see here. So the observation that I make is you've embedded it very well in line with pupil progress's onboarding kind of schedule and CPD, and we've aligned that together as a school, and we are seeing the impact from that. And I think that's the important takeaway, is that once we've embedded this as good practice and we continue to share good practice amongst colleagues, then we will see tangible differences in our outcomes.
Absolutely, and you'll see that if I go on to through year 2. So this is I've added on our predicted grades for this coming August, which you can see the trend continues.
Oh, I can't see year 2 at the moment, Matt.
It's on 1 second.
Yeah, that's the screen there.
Is it on? Is progression year 2 on?
No, it's not sharing at the moment.
Apologies.
Okay.
Is that better?
1 second. No, can't quite see that.
If you give me 1 second. Let's try my entire screen and see if that works.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Okay, something's loading. Oh, perfect. Yeah, I mean, it's full screen as well. Yeah, that's great.
I've done it on all screen rather than one window. Apologies.
Great. No, that's great. Thank you.
So the first 2 columns are what was on the previous slide, November mock in 23 to the results in August 24. And you'll see the trend has continued to our predicted grades in August 25. And I will say that's another outcome of using pupil progress, is that our predictions were far closer in the last academic year to actual results than they have been previously. So we can forecast with much more accuracy where we will be. So I am confident, possibly within 1% either way, that these results will be delivered in the summer because of the information we have. And you can see that we're looking at over 40% for 4+ in English and Maths at 5A to C, for the first time in a long time at the academy I am in.
Yeah.
And again, the 5+ 5 A to C, including English and Maths, is we're expecting it to double on last year's result. Because we are putting resources in the right areas. There's no need for a weekly Year 11 match meeting between the head of English, the head of Maths, and myself. We simply have strategic ones once a half term because of the information we have on the students, and we can see live where they are. So there's no need to just meet at 2 or 3 weekly to discuss individuals. We simply assess, put strategies in place, and then allow the team to do their work because we know that it's being followed through. Because everybody has access to pupil progress, not just the head of department. So we're empowering the teachers. Obviously, the Attainment 8 is on the increase, and it's really pleasing because at the end of the day, we're all here to give students opportunities in the future and improve outcomes, and this is what we're doing through these results. And it isn't just English and Maths, although I focused on English and Maths. For example, some business grades have gone up, but there's been a 30 percentage point increase in business from 23, 24. We're expecting 30 percentage point increase in 25. Science is expecting to almost double their 4+ and 5+. We're looking at higher students achieving a minimum of a 6, which again, and that's 100% of that cohort. Again, which is a first for the academy. So this is we've built upon what we learned in the first 8 months. As I say, this cohort has been tracked since the beginning of Key Stage 4. So it's a really, really rich, in-depth picture we have, and we've been allowed to. It's enabled us to close gaps constantly throughout the key stage, rather than just waiting for the mock at the end of year 10 as the first kind of big indicator. And again, that is powerful. So we haven't lost the September to June of year 10. If an assessment's picked up that hasn't been, it's either a misconception or quality first teaching hasn't been delivered, then obviously the data's allowed us to revisit those. Departments have had quality conversations around how they can improve the teaching and learning of that area, and then implemented it and closed the gap as we are going on.
I think it's an interesting conversation I had about 2 weeks ago now, I think, with a deputy head, and it's about actually, do we continue to steam through the curriculum and get all content kind of delivered, or is there a moment to actually pause and understand where we might need to re-deliver certain areas of the curriculum to close those gaps instead of steaming through the curriculum? And I think that is a key piece here, because we want to cover content, but actually if students aren't understanding key pieces of information, we need to build that into our scheme of learning. We need to build that into our delivery. And actually, I think that having data that highlights that to you, it puts it on the agenda. It's like students do not understand algebra. I can clearly see that the average at the top is like 24%. So what are we going to do about it? Are we going to continue to teach, or are we going to, cover that as an area now and actually look at our resources? Is it that there was too much cognitive overload on the slides? What is it that students didn't achieve there? And like you said, quality of teaching, and
absolutely. And then it's a case of pause the curriculum sequencing, if you like, redeliver, possibly in a different way, possibly through different tasks, and then continue to drip that in through retrieval as we go up to the next assessment, and then have an element of algebra, if that's where the area of underperformance is, in the next assessment, so we can gauge whether the gap is closed or not.
I like it. Really like
it. So that's how we're looking for August 25, and then One of our real focuses, hopefully this will just go straight to the next slide
we
now,
can see that.
Is pupil premium. So my current academy, over 40% of our cohort, whole school cohort, is pupil premium. When you look at the outgoing cohort for 23 and 24, it was actually closer to 50% of those year groups were pupil premium. So it was a big focus, and quite clearly, the analytical software shows that pupil progress was pupil premium students were underperforming.
Yep.
And you can see in 2023, the gaps are quite large, particularly Progress 8, English Attainment 8, and Maths Attainment 8.
Yep.
So it was a key focus for the school. Using pupil progress, easily identified. All micropopulations are on the bottom of subject analysis, whether that's being viewed by the teacher or whether by the head of faculty or the data manager and senior leadership. It's clear. The students are identified, can be filtered. So that was one of the areas. This is one of the areas that proved to me that pupil progress is fit for purpose for our academy, because we are able to look at this micropopulation within our classes, their QLA for these students, what have they taken on board, what the areas do they need to develop, how can we develop them. There was conversations across faculties with classroom teachers about what's worked for this student in your area. I've tried this, didn't have the right outcome. Any suggestions on how I take this forward? And we've now, as you see, 23 to 24, we've closed the gaps considerably.
Yeah.
Now, the cynics amongst you will say, well, the Progress 8 gap in 24 is closed because non-pupil premium have actually performed worse than they did in 2023. But when you look at English Attainment 8 and Maths Attainment 8, the non-pupil premium students actually performed pretty similar.
Yeah.
And that means we are starting to implement strategies for students that have genuine impact, because the pupil premium students at English Attainment 8 have gone from 5.11 to 6.43. In maths have gone from 4.4 to 5.3.
Yeah.
And that's with the non-pupil premium cohort remaining as they are.
Yeah.
So these are really starting to help students achieve better outcomes and attainment as they go forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is obviously pupil premium will remain a focus for our academy. It's on our academy improvement plan because we have such high numbers of pupil premium students. But we've adopted this in the current year 11 with we called it Accelerate 5, but it's loosely based on Pixel's Focus 5. So each year 11 class teacher has identified 5 students. They don't have to be pupil premium. They can be HAP, LAP, middle prior attainers, whatever it might be. They've identified 5 students that they're going to work with over the year to improve outcomes, implementing some of the strategies we've learned and also others that are more suited to the pupils in front of them. And I'm pretty sure if you come to me in September, I will have a similar outcomes and improvement progress for the Focus 5 against the non-Focus 5 or the Accelerate 5. And one of the tools that enables us to do that really well is the tagged tool that you've introduced to pupil progress. So students can be tagged in the live trackers and filtered out very quickly for those critical students that you're focusing on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the also just a quick note to listeners out there: if your school is a Pixel member, you get access to pupil progress at 0 cost for English and Maths, and that is across all features and functionality. And you'll also be provided with a national comparison at a granular, precise level to see where students' gaps might be compared to nationals. I think it's a quick note there, and
that actually gives confidence to staff as well, knowing that they are delivering in line with other schools in Pixel. It's actually quite motivating.
That's great. And I think just a note on the tagging kind of feature, and I'll kind of dive into the software in a moment and quickly show everyone that we can tag those key sets of students, but this is the same message. What do they need to learn? And unless we've got, if we're looking at summative data, great, we've maybe got that kind of top end of where they are, but are their learning needs the same? Because you might have one student in that, group of 5 that is 1 mark away and actually underperformed in an easier part of the paper, maybe for example AO1 in English, where there's 4 available marks, and the other 4 students are underperforming in AO3. And unless we've got that precision, then we haven't got a clear action plan. We haven't got that confidence in what we actually need to do. So I think that's a key observation that you've made there, Matt, to actually make those raises happen.
Absolutely. And then the last slide for me was just some middle leader feedback. So after the first 6 months, I sent out a simple Microsoft form with around 15 questions on it. I've just picked out the key for me. Has it improved tracking within your faculty? 100%. As people progress, empowered you as a middle leader to improve outcomes? 100%. And that would be the same for staff as well, because they have the picture on their laptop every single day. There's no pausing, there's no waiting for data, there's no bottleneck with the data manager, as I mentioned earlier. And then the quotes, fully aware of student data across all classes, challenge students and staff regarding question level, forensic breakdown topic by topic. And that is something that's cropped up again and again in conversations. We are being far more forensic around where we can raise attainment, and then the strategies that allow us to raise attainment. And we can quickly identify strategies that are working and continue, and those that aren't, whether they need to be tweaked or whether they need to be removed and replaced with something else.
Yeah.
And that's not creating a lot of work for teachers, because there is zero workload from the teachers. It's just a case of putting in assessment information. Some teachers assess every single subtopic, others just go topic by topic. But there's been no stipulation from me around the number of assessments that have to happen. It's all led by middle leaders and teachers around what they feel their groups need. And then obviously the structure of conversations with staff and students on areas to improve has been phenomenal. And I would say the biggest change for us, not just in the outcomes, I've said it's empowered middle leaders and classroom teachers, but I would say it's actually raised aspirations, not only of students, but also of staff, because they can see where potential is to help students improve. And that has been really powerful.
Yeah. Matt, I actually think that's a really nice place to leave it, in actually that, whilst the session is titled about how to raise data with that precise piece, you've actually built onto something nice as a kind of a finishing point, which sits within, but it's that aspiration piece where, I think it links back to where I was saying, you feel confident, you feel capable because you've got such rich, accurate data in front of you that you're like, okay, we can go to the next step and the next step and the next step, because we've got the key bits of information that we need. And I think that's a really nice place to leave it, actually, because part of raising attainment is having higher aspirations of what attainment could be. So I think it's a nice place to leave it. And I just want to say thanks, Matt. It's been great to have you on here. The journey that you've been on has been incredible, and I think testament to you specifically, running with this and seeing, tangible outcomes, not only in that first year, but your forecast ahead of this academic year, the cohort in 2025. So a massive congratulations, Matt. Keep it up, and we'll catch up soon, no doubt, in a CPD soon.
We certainly will. I can't wait for next year's predictions.
Yes, may it continue.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks very much.